Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Select Generation podcast. Today, I'm joined by two very special guests. I'm joined by two men from the Youth for Youth Soccer Association or Soccer Club. I'll let them talk about it and introduce themselves. But to the millions of followers listening, this is Jackson, who is the assistant, and we got Brando, who is the director at Youth for Youth. So yeah, I'll let you guys introduce what you are, who you're about, or who you are, what you're about, and just talk to us a little bit about Youth for Youth. So Brandon and Jackson, I'll leave it over to you to introduce what you guys are about, what you do.
Thank you, Sam, for having us. Youth Free Football Club is a multifaceted football organization, right? We do training, mentorship, and management. Um, and what that looks like is it's a pipeline broken into three phases, right? What we do with kids 8 to 12 is private training, small group training, one, two, or four kids with either one or two coaches, right? And all of our coaches are actively playing college football or college soccer, we prefer to call it here. Jackson plays at Columbia. We have guys at Syracuse, Holy Cross, Amherst, Williams, right? Take a school, you name it on the East Coast, we've got it. And then with guys 12 to 16 in our competitive phase, we help them get trials, right? Help them play for high level clubs using our network. We've played, everywhere from NYCFC, Red Bulls, Met Oval, MSC, every team in that New York City area. And then finally, guys 16 plus, we help them get recruited, right? To top programs that either we were also being recruited by or that guys play at within our staff.
Awesome. Awesome. Good. Jackson, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a bit about your background and, why you're involved in Youth for Youth.
Yeah, I mean, Brando so beautifully captured the essence of the program. I kind of just do what he tells me to do. But the gist is that Brandon and I kind of grew up together in New York City. We played together on Met Oval. Maybe some of the viewers don't know, but it's a local team in New York City, part of a MLS Next program, very long history. And we met there around like very early days, like U12, U13 maybe. And we've just stayed close ever since. And I think it was around COVID time, maybe 2021, 2020. Brando just kind of came up with this crazy idea when we're all, in lockdown in the houses, kind of going crazy. And, it tells me like, oh, we've got so many friends playing soccer. Why don't we just like use our knowledge, kind of put our heads together and help people avoid the mistakes we made? And it sounded like a great idea to me. He fixed the logistics and I just kind of followed with. And it's led us here to this beautiful point now where a real LLC, where we're becoming a very big company. We're partnered with NYCFC, and it's becoming more and more serious. And I'm really happy Brando got me involved, and now I'm just really happy to be part of the entire program and keep pushing on wherever Brando tells me to go.
Nice. That's awesome. That's cool. So that was going to be my first question. Like, why did you guys start? Like, what was kind of the vision? Like, what Brando made you think like, okay, we need to start Youth for Youth? Like, what was the first kind of idea that you had?
So it started with a phone call with two other guys that I'll shout out. Jassim Wildman, he plays at Skidmore, and then Lucas Vian, who's at WashU. And it kind of this was when we were in high school, right? It was a super casual idea. We're like, let's coach kids. Um, and this is actually a funny story that pertains to my background here. I had a project at school, right? And you could kind of do anything. And I decided I would, make a soccer coaching business, right? Within a week, I, made the logo, sort of designed kits. Obviously, things have changed since then, built the website. Um, and I spoke to them and they said, okay, we're going to continue this throughout the rest of our high school. As we got to the end of high school, we sat down and said, all right, right, are we going to do this in college? And they're kind of like, we don't know where this is going. At the time, this is about a year ago, right? At the time, we were sort of a grassroots organization. We hadn't really gone anywhere, hadn't done anything, had no credentials. Um, but I decided, listen, I'm not playing. I didn't end up committing. I had offers to play at a few different schools, but I got into Brown and I couldn't play here. So I was, here I am. And I decided that I needed something to sort of channel that, right? To continue channeling my love for football. And then ever since then, it's just been an upward spiral. Every day, new clients, new partnerships, and just big things coming.
Awesome. That's cool. So, what are you guys about? Like, what is your kind of like vision, mission, identity? Like, what is Youth for Youth about?
I think Jackson he hit the nail there when he said it's really a program that helps players and families not make the same mistake that we did, right? The football scene, the soccer scene in America and especially New York is extremely difficult to navigate, right? We have parents calling us say, "Oh, he needs to play here, he needs to play there. Can he get a trial here?" I said, "Listen, here's how it works, right?" And we want to break things down for them so they understand what they're getting themselves into, right? They understand what opportunities are worth, you know, fully pursuing and what other opportunities might not be the places for them to, to put their eggs in. Um, and although we're an LLC, we're a social impact business, right? So a lot of the work we're doing is for free. Guys that we think, hey, he has lots of potential. The kid at Watford, for example, he has lots of potential. We're going to work with him, right? And he might work for our program one day. He'll do great things for himself, for our program. And we believe that he deserves the access to these resources, to these services that he otherwise would not be able to pay for.
Got it. Awesome. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like it's a very difficult process to navigate. We get a lot of that. So what do you think what do you think is the main part of you as an LLC? Like, do you think the main part of you is giving private trainings? Do you think the main part of like the value you can provide is advice, is support for the college process? Like, where would you say Youth for Youth's main sort of value add is?
Jackson?
Um, yeah, no problem. I think I think if you look at our history as of now, it's been a lot of private trainings. But I think kind of as Brandon hit on with by talking about like the essence of our program, the nuts and bolts of it is kind of about flexibility. Like we're here to mend to whatever a player needs. And I know it's kind of a wishy-washy answer, like it doesn't really pick a corner. But in reality, like we're just here to help players. And if a player doesn't need private training, if they're training every week with their club team, and what they need is just someone to talk to, someone to ask questions about with the college process, we're completely fine with that. At the end of the day, we're here for the player. We're here to help you. And like I said before, we're here to help you avoid those mistakes that me and Brando and all the other coaches have made. So if a player comes to us and he's like, I can't privately train with you guys, I just, I want to have a few phone calls, like pick your brain, understand what's going on. By all means, like I'm happy to say that's the nuts and bolts of our operation, but I'm happy to also say like we can train kids. So I think we really cater to whatever the player needs because at the end of the day, we're just trying to help people.
The idea is that it's a long-term program, right? Where once the family gets involved, we can offer all of our services to them depending on what they need, right? We're working with kids who already have private training, and are training 2, 3 days a week with them. And that's okay for us, right? Their private trainers are not active college players, right? These kids want to get recruited. So they might want to, call Jackson on a Wednesday night after that private training, right? They're guys that we've never met. We've watched full game tape. They live across the ocean or across the country, right, on the West Coast. And we're working with them because we believe that, hey, our services are the right fit for you. So it's not a one size fits all, although it has been private training up to date. In the past, 2, 3 months, we've really started to expand into other sectors.
Got it. And what do you think what are like some of the mistakes that you guys made? Like what are some things that you didn't know that you wish you did know?
Hmm.
Um, I can go first, Brandon, if you're still thinking. I think for me, a lot of like kind of like the fog for me or the area of stress I had kind of through this process was really related to college and just your expectations going into it all. I think it's really easy as a younger player to see social media, kind of just look up the best college teams online and be like, I want to go to Duke. I want to go to the team that just won the NCAA, or whatever. And that's sadly, it's just not the reality for everyone. It's extremely circumstantial, the process. And I tell everyone, like, in order for you to get an offer from the school, you've got to have repeated moments of luck. And yes, like you have to have good grades and you have to be an extremely good player, but a lot of it has to do with luck. Like a coach has to see you on a day that they're having a good day and they want to see a player in your position and you play the way that they want their center back or their right back to play. And if you hit all those boxes, then great, like you've made the team. But so many little things can go wrong that you don't control as a player. And it's really easy to forget about that in the process. And I know for me, it caused a lot of, kind of harping on myself and maybe didn't help my own mental state. And it really helped me when I kind of stepped out of it to just realize like that's the reality that not everyone, can like who you are as a player. even get to see you, and that doesn't make you a better or worse player. So I think for me, it's about just managing those expectations and kind of help it clear the fog that surrounds this entire college process because it's very complicated by everyone surrounding it, and I just want to help people kind of steer through that.
And Sam, I guess would you want me to answer that question from an LLC perspective or from a personal perspective?
No, from a personal perspective, like
Yeah.
you going through the like playing soccer growing up, like
Uh-huh.
what did you what were some mistakes that you made?
I think I had a lot of psychological issues throughout that, like, in terms of playing, right? Worrying about performance, sort of overweighting the value of each game. Um, and I mean, I'm still playing. I'm just not playing for the team here, but I'm reflecting on that process. I think I'm starting to get over that, and I've just seen my performances just become much better. Um, if I were to speak to my younger self, I would say, listen, what happens tomorrow what happens on Saturday or Sunday morning, right? It does not matter. So go out there and enjoy the football you're playing, right? Leave it out on the pitch, but it does not matter if you play a bad football match. And I think a lot of players would benefit from hearing that from an older guy who's got to a higher level, right? I think if I had heard that 4 or 5 years ago, consistently, right? If someone would tell me that, if I had someone to talk to after I had a bad match, and they would tell me that, I think that would get me very far. And that would solve a lot of issues that I didn't end up solving until a much later time.
Got it. Yeah, that was going to be my next question. So, um, Jackson, I'll go to you then. If you were speaking to yourself, or if you were speaking to a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, 17-year-old, and they came to you and they said, "Hey, Jackson, I want to play college soccer," what advice would you
Yeah.
give that player?
Oh, good question. Good question. I think one, just like from a development standpoint, is focus on the basics as a player. A lot of people in college, like some of them, I don't want to. I'm new to the game. I'm new to college soccer, but a lot of people here that maybe some of them lack the fundamental skills I think every player should have. But even when I was training as a younger kid, like you get really eager, you can start to hit long balls and you're like, you know what, I want to hit a long ball every time, or I want to do shooting training. But even those really basic things, like working on perfect 5 yard pass, crisp 5 yard pass all the time, like those little basics go so far in making you a better player and more recruitable. Like having you know, that technical base kind of separates you from even a good college, like a basic college player to a very good college player. So focusing on that. And then when it comes to just like stuff I could have done better, I think it has a lot to do with being prepared. Like when you get these phone calls with coaches or when you start the process, have a list of the schools that are realistic. Have a list of schools that maybe are reaches, like understanding where you stand and then, preparing your best when you talk to these coaches. Like I think it's really easy to be naive and like, oh, this coach wants to talk to me. Like he's gonna do all the talking for me in the call. That's just not the reality. Like there's hundreds and thousands of players in the country. If you have to impress them as well. If you don't impress them on that call or you don't ask the right questions, they've got the next guy to talk to. So preparing yourself as well is also a big thing.
Yeah, good. And then, I mean, Brando, I know you just touched on it there, but same question for you. Like, if you were speaking to a 16-year-old, 17-year-old who came to you like, "Hey, I need some advice to start the college process," like, what would you say?
Know the schools that your profile makes sense for, right? I think a lot of guys, sort of what Jackson said, um, a lot of guys will target places and waste a lot of time and energy and money, right? Going to ID camp at you know, let's say I spoke to like mostly D3s and then the Ivies. That was really it. But I did go through a period where I was like trying to email ACC schools. It was, for me, that was not going to happen, right? And also with my academic profile, it made more sense to target the schools that I was targeting, right? Vice versa. If a kid comes to me and he says, I want to play at a Columbia, right? And I say, hey, how are your grades looking? How's your GPA? Do you have a test? I know the colleges are starting to reinstate test scores, which is definitely going to change the game, especially at top academic performing institutions. And I would say, right, what does that look like for you, and what does that mean for your recruiting process, right? Are you really going to put all your eggs into targeting Columbia, or are we going to look for another school that might be proficient academically, but more aligned with your profile? And I think a lot of players end up not getting any offers because they spend the whole recruiting process targeting the same 10, 15 schools that are not going to reciprocate the interest, right? Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't shoot for the stars, right? You should always have a dream, you should always have a target, but do not get caught up with that target, right? Do not allow that target to overshadow the fact that you do need to be recruiting schools that make more sense for your profile as a student and as a player.
Well, no, I can't reiterate that enough. Like, you're a good soccer player, right? Like, if you're a great soccer player and you're going to these ID camps and you're going to these showcases and, the coaches are not giving you attention or not speaking to you, I always say, like, a level that you should be targeting is like, okay, last year, what what schools did the U19 players commit to? What schools from your team are players talking to? If you're on a team playing where you go to showcases and some D3 schools come, some NAIA schools come, and they look at you and they talk to you, that's probably your level, right? Like, don't expect to talk to Clemson, Wake Forest, Duke, if you're getting emails or getting people reach out from D3, NAIA. Like, obviously you might be a good player and you might be on a team where you're the best player, but like the coaches are not going to come to you. And yeah, like being realistic about it. Like, I've got like
Yeah,
you should go to a Clemson camp. You should go to a you should go to a UCLA camp. You should go. But if you go to the camp and you see you're not at the level, like, you have to understand like that might not happen for you, and you should be putting your eggs in other baskets. Like, if you spend your whole junior year chasing these massive D1 schools that are recruiting, I don't know, 4 or 5 players a year from top youth academies, and you're playing NPL or even lower ECNL, like, you need to understand that that might not be your level. So yeah, I totally agree with that. All right, you mentioned something about like the recruiting, like the academic process for the Ivy Leagues and whatever. Generally speaking, um, Jackson, I'll start with you. How do you see soccer in the US evolving, like leading up to the World Cup? Obviously, recently we've had, soccer in the US is expanding. There's USL clubs, MLS Next Pro, MLS Next is growing. How do you see soccer in the US growing over the next 5 years?
Yeah. Great question. So I used to play for the New York Red Bulls youth academy, and I think I started seeing this kind of transition as I aged out of the academy. And a lot of youth teams are starting to do this, and it sort of parallels the system in Europe, where you've got teams. Before I used to go to like my normal high school or normal middle school when I played for the New York Red Bulls, and I would just commute from Red Bulls and back, like school, whatever. But in my final years, they were starting to set up, like, an actual residential academy. They had dorms, they had host families, they had a school. And because of that, they eliminate all this like time in between, and they have you in the facility for so much longer. And that adds like a session or two. That adds, watching film. And I think as teams start to progress to that more and more and more, we're starting to see the development of so many more players that's, pushing them professionally. In terms of college, like, it's very hard to switch. The setup it has, it's rooted in like a very historical, it's got academic ties, and it's very, unique to America in the fact that, these institutions are important and they're not going to change their fundamental core because, soccer is becoming a bigger thing. So college soccer, I don't know how much that will change. But I think the level just in America and therefore college soccer is going to continue to rise just because we have so many players kind of falling in love with the game earlier now. And you've got clubs that are really producing players through these systems, and they're really trying to eliminate any distraction or any kind of outside source that could limit or, minimize your growth as a player.
Got it. Yeah, Brando, what do you think?
I think a key point that's actually hindering the growth of the sport. Um, I like to call it a soccer desert, right? Where there are so many areas within the United States that are void of top level clubs, right? I'm in one right now. Right? Brown is in Providence, Rhode Island. There's one club, Bayside, MLS Next Club. If you're not playing for Bayside and you want to play ECNL or MLS Next, you're going all the way to Boston, right? An hour to an hour and a half drive. And this is a city. It's considered, a mid-size or smaller size city, right? We're not in a rural area. So there are soccer deserts, not only in rural areas, but in urban areas And I think that's the last step to really catalyze the growth of the game in America. Because if you go to London, I mean, obviously London is a city, but how many pro clubs are there in London? Like 16 or something within the top five, whatever it might be, right? Even if you go outside of London, there will be a football pitch with an academy every, 3 or 4 kilometers, right? That is where in America we have a problem because everything is monopolized by the MLS clubs, right? As Jackson said, like Red Bulls is building a bigger system where they have the residential academies and guys from those soccer deserts might come in and play for them. But I think one thing that is stopping that final point of growth that will really have us competing with, top nations, right? England, France, Italy, whatever it might be, because we're almost there. But I think once we solve this problem, it's a geographic issue, right? Once we're able to target those areas, then I think that will catalyze the final growth. That might look like a change in the pro levels, right? There's a lot of talk of pro rel. I don't know if it'll happen with the MLS, but if that happens in the USL system, that could contribute to the final growth of this game in this country.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Brando, you need to run for president, man.
It's funny. So I was at the mayoral office yesterday for the city of Providence, which is not. I hope they're not watching this. It's not that big of a deal, right? Like it's a small city, and we were just discussing this problem, and I was at it was almost like a footballers union meeting, and we were just discussing how we were gonna expand the culture here, and so tune in, right? Anyone who's watching, tune in because our program might have a big say in the expansion of the game here.
That's awesome.
This guy's a show off. This guy's a
Yeah,
show off.
love
Mayoral offices. Oh my God. I'm stuck.
What? Just I got a couple more questions. So, Jackson, we'll go back to you. What gives you inspiration not to play soccer, but like to be a private trainer or to help kids, or like what gives you inspiration to make an impact on someone's football career?
Yeah, great question. I think I can pinpoint it down to a single example that comes to mind when people ask me this. Usually I train this kid named Jack, not too far from Colombia. Um, and he's a young striker, very good player, and he's full of energy. And sometimes I've got to reel him in, like, oh Jack, we've got to run this drill, we've got to focus, kind of stick with me here. But yeah, it was a weekly thing. Every Sunday morning, I was out there with Jack. And he's a striker, so we worked a lot on shooting. And he'd always kind of goof off on the extra reps. I'd see him throwing up the ball in the air and like doing bicycle or something like that. And I was like, Jack, you're never gonna do that in a game. Like, come on, let's focus on the lefty shot, hitting the corner. So one day, we had finished all the drills. He did it excellent. I was like, you know what, Jack, let's practice some bicycle kicks. So I'm throwing the ball up to him, making sure he doesn't hurt himself. Does his bicycle kicks, session ends. About 4 hours later, he had a game, and I get a text from his mom, and it's him scoring a bicycle kick, and it just made my day. It was moments like that, and it's like, you know, I don't really know how much of that I really contributed to it, but just getting that message and seeing Jack succeed and seeing him score a bicycle kick, I feel like, wow, I'm a part of that. I'm part of this young kid's success, and that's really fulfilling as a person. And I just love that feeling, and I'll chase it for as long as I can because it's better than almost anything I've ever experienced in my life. So that feeling is really what drives me to keep doing this.
Love that. Brando, what about you? What's your sort of passion for what you do?
I love seeing the click, the moment where a kid realizes, right? Like, obviously, I always say like my favorite age to coach is around like 11 to 12 years old, right? Right before guys or as players transition into the 11-11 game. Because that's where they're playing full-size football or football on a full-size pitch, but they're still missing some fundamentals, right? When you see a guy figure it out, like for me, I couldn't play a long ball for the longest time. Like I was playing on a full-size pitch and I just could not get my technique down. And so when I'm teaching a kid a long ball, I see my past self in him, right? And when he gets that click, I remember that exact moment, right? That nostalgia of learning. I learned how to do it in my grandparents' backyard, right? I was playing it across the pool. And this is a long, long time ago. And I remember that click, right? And when I see it in their eyes, it's that same sensation, right? It's only amplified, right? Helping a kid. Because I know it's the best feeling in the world when you finally get it, right? When you finally learn that skill, when you finally, get the technique down, right? With consistency.
Love that. That's awesome. Good. Okay, last question. So for youth, just circling back to Youth for Youth and what you guys are about, what you do, how you've kind of evolved, and it's growing, and you're getting new clients and doing private sessions and advising, etc., etc. Do you guys have a plan for like what you want to go towards in 5 years? Like, where do you see Youth for Youth in 5 years' time?
We want to make this a program that has hotspots across the nation, right? This summer we're having guys from the Brown team. I mean, we're not. This is not a confirmation on this call, but we're having guys from the Brown team run a camp in Boston, right? I'm trying to reach out to guys in the West Coast. We can provide the legal structure and the business structure that college players need to run these programs themselves, right? And we're going to still provide the administrative help, and we're going to organize things. But in terms of the personnel, the way I see this program expanding is it's one that we can have up to 50 to 100 guys, and we're putting money into the hands of these guys who are pursuing the pro game, right, or pursuing the college game. And if they don't get money in their hands, they might have to work a job on Saturday nights, and they have a game on Sunday mornings, right? And that hinders their development. That hinders their ability to become a professional footballer, right? So I really see it as a program that's not only, that's why it's called Youth for Youth, right? That is our ethos. Our ethos is in our name. It's a program that's not only, reaching youth players all across the nation, but that's allowing aspiring professionals and college players to get employment, right? And that way it becomes a pipeline. So we have guys who have worked under the program, who have been coached by us or mentored by us, and eventually they start working for the program, and they do that same thing, right? It might look like youth academies. We don't know yet, but we do have a long-term vision, right? That's the general idea. In terms of how tangible, right? What exactly we're going to build, can't say just yet, but we have things brewing.
But love that. What about you, Jackson? What about you? Or
Um,
you just do what Brando says?
I
No, no,
mean,
I don't know why. I call him and I say Jackson, what do you think we should do? He's like, I don't know, do something. I'm like, all right. I call him. I call him.
I mean, Brando's so good with the business jargon and, really illustrating the path, in a very finite and technical way. I think for me, it's just about my long-term goal with this, and I'm very positive it aligns with Brando, is about maintaining a certain feeling and maintaining a certain authenticity that I feel like we offer right now that's unique to us. Um, for as long as this program goes on and for wherever the lengths this takes us, I think it's just about being honest. I don't want us to turn into, I don't want to use any names, but I don't want this to turn into some of the other programs and companies I see out there. Um, part of what we talk about now is how our own experience kind of drives what we're doing and what we tell you. And I don't ever want to deviate from that path. Like I will always be honest with the people I want to work with. And for as long as this is a thing, I hope that's what the goal is. And I think we can do that on a large scale. And that has to do with like, who we bring into this and, how fast we grow. But for as long as we do this and for as long as I'm, sticking with Brando, it's just about keeping that authenticity and making sure that like I'm not gonna lie to you if I don't think certain things are possible or if, this is not the right move for you, I'm gonna be honest. And that's what I see in the future for this is maintaining the spirit that's kind of gotten us here.
Yeah.
I think one thing that is our point of difference, right? Parents are coming to us and converting their kids from private training programs or mentorship programs that have been 15 years in the making, right? And why do they come to us? Because we have a culture of intimacy, right? We have a culture of we are happy to take a phone call in the middle of the day. We are happy to talk to you on a Sunday morning, right? We're happy to train whenever is needed, whenever there's a time available, right? Other programs will not offer that.
Awesome. No, I couldn't agree more with that, guys. I totally agree with what you say. Like, you have to do a good job first, and don't try and tell people that they're good enough for this if you don't believe it. And just being a good person in this space is really important because, I mean, you know that soccer is such a business in the US, and I mean, we're part of it. We're both part of it, but you have to be genuine and be proper because, I mean, for us, and I'm sure it's the same with you guys, like, that doing a good job, people talking good about you is the main part of why you're successful and growing. Like, we like to be genuine and do things properly, not like some of the other people. Jackson. No names mentioned, but anyway, guys, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to seeing what happens with Youth for Youth.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Sam.
you.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.